Hello, this is Clint and Angelina. We are rebuilding this Dodge Ram ProMaster 2500. We are going to take this stuff out and put our little twist on it and give it back to Janine. This is what it looks like now, and you're about to see what it looks like done.
These are all photos from after the build has been finished. Stay tuned for the end. We will give you a full video van tour after we show you the whole process. But just before we do that, I wanted to share a few things about this build specifically. Again, it is a rebuild. It already had the floor and windows installed as well as a fan installed. It's our first time we're building vans not for ourselves. We're not going too much into depth about the how-tos and how we did everything exactly. This is mostly just for purposes of knowing the order of operations of how to approach the whole build. This is a good introductory video if you're just getting started and kind of want to know where to start and how you should go about doing things. So we definitely recommend doing additional research for doing each specific thing, especially with using tools if you're new to building and construction. We did a ton of research before we even started. I made a spreadsheet with materials, their costs, their sources, and in the end I saved all the receipts and we logged it all down. Fair warning, there's a lot of fast motion in this video, so feel free to pause and rewind. That's pretty much it for an intro. Let us go back and rewind to the very beginning from when we were just stripping the van down. Did plan and design this whole thing before we even started. This is especially important for the electrical system, which I'll go into later. If you want to hide your wires, you want to know where everything's going, how much wire you need, and where you're going to place it. So the very first thing we did was install the solar. We wired the panels and ran the wire into the van so that it could connect to the rest of the system. And then we started to frame everything out, starting with the walls. And then the window, and it helps to build the framing on a level ground because you want to make sure everything's level, and then you want to double check using a level tool. We then shipped left the doors, used knotty pine cedar. We then moved on to the back corners, we boxed that in, and then finished framing both windows using plywood, which we sanded and stained. We also covered the rear overhead frame of the van. We then continued onto the ceiling framing. And as we're doing all the framing, we are again taking mental notes of where our wiring is going to be, where our lights are going to go, where all of our appliances are going to fit in. We then reused and replaced the insulation that was already in the van. Then we finally got around to shiplapping the walls and the ceiling using a nail gun and a saw, of course, to cut all the shiplap, and hammered all the nails in to just give it a flush, nice flat surface. We also covered the vertical part of the back corners with plywood, sanded and stained, and again threaded the wires through the framing and through the shiplap. As we did that, and we cut holes for the recessed lights that are going to be flush up on the shiplap using a hole saw. The cedar we are going to use for the kitchenette countertop. We want to get a butcher block look sort of thing. This is all reclaimed cedar, so it was previously painted. I sanded it down to reveal the nice warm tones of the cedar. So for the countertop, we clamped and glued and then nail gunned all of that together to make the big countertop. We'll get back to that later, but first, a quick electrical lesson from Clint.
So this is the fuse box and that's the ground.
Yes.
Okay.
This is a ground to the body. So now I can ground this. Now all of these are grounds because this is all actually connected in here. That's the power wire. That's power going in, power going out.
This is going to connect to the batteries.
I'm going to set that up to the battery. Yeah.
What does that mean?
Hear that?
Yeah.
Positive. And it also says negative. So all of these are going to be the positive slots. Like right here we have our first set of lights, which goes out. So all of them get power from the battery here. The power comes out of the positive and then goes to whatever it may be. For example, this light comes up to the dimmer. One of these is positive. It goes out to the dimmer, it goes all the way out, and there's also one negative that is bringing all of it back down to here.
To clarify all that knowledge, I wanted to make a diagram in the way I understood it best, in the simplest terms. Now we're going to talk about fuses.
If there's a surge of energy going through the wires, what it does is it's rated at a certain amount. It could only handle, say, 5 amps. No, it will break. It will pop. The little piece of metal in it will break, so it stops the circuit. See that little thing in the middle?
Yes.
Yeah, so that will break if it has too many amps. That way it doesn't set on fire, it doesn't destroy your whole van.
Like it's easily replaceable.
Exactly. Say if this 16 gauge wire is rated for 10 amps, and if the battery for some reason, like all of a sudden there's 15 amps going through it, it would set this on fire. You know, it would heat up. It's more than this can handle. That's why you put a fuse that you want it to be rated higher than your appliance, but you want it rated lower than what the wire can handle. So it pops in between those two. You want it higher than the appliance that you're using, then lower than the wire, so it can handle the light, but it will stop before it turns on fire.
And this is Clint demonstrating how to cut wires and twist them together and connect them all. Next, we cut pieces for the bed and storage compartments underneath the bed, and we cut pieces for the kitchenette and the pull-out table that would come from the front of the bed. And you can see that Clint added a cedar trim from the reclaimed cedar on most of the pieces of plywood, which gave it a nice two-toned look to it. Before I sanded and stained these pieces using clear polyurethane, and I used that for all the plywood pieces that we used. We didn't sand and stain any of the shiplap or the cedar tiny groove because they were already really nice. We then go on to installing the pieces of the bed, starting with the floor, bottom part of the bed. And you could see that all the wiring is coming through the bottom of where the shiplap ends, because this is where we are putting the fuse box batteries, inverter, and charge controller. We want to make sure that all of that is pretty accessible and ideally in the same place to run less wire. And then we revisited the kitchenette countertop and finished putting the cedar together with, again, clamps, wood glue, and the nail gun. So we sanded it for days until it was pretty and smooth and flat, and then we cut out where the sink would go and save the middle piece as the top of the small side seat. We then epoxied the counter to give it a nice surface for working on preparing food. 1 part epoxy resin and 1 part hardener and mix it all together. You have to do this in a timely manner or else it will harden and become epoxy wherever it ends up. We still have little bits of epoxy on the floor we use. Make sure you cover everything with plastic or something that you are able to dispose of afterward. Again, we did this in an enclosed shed to prevent any debris or dust to land and stay forever in the epoxy for this table that we worked really hard. And moved the liquid around using a putty knife. Used a torch to pop any air bubbles that form. We then installed the sink using a silicone type of sealant. Installed the plumbing tubes and water gallons and pump. Got that all ready to be wired up to the solar system. By then had put it all in the van, ready to go. We built the doors for that kitchenette using plywood and some of that extra knotty cedar pine. Some good hinges and latches on it so that it could stay shut when Janine is driving around in the van. And last, we made that overhead shelf above the little kitchenette, and Clint made these like stoppers, like book stoppers, so that things stay in place, and he notched out the bottom of the shelf so that those could fit in and she could adjust where the stopper would go. And that's pretty much all the video footage of the build that I got. Now here's a video tour of the final product. So that is that. It took us about 3.5 months to complete this build. We didn't work every day. Clint works full-time 4 days out of the week. Again, recommend having a spreadsheet to stay track of all your materials. I will link down below as much as I can of what we used. So yes, I hope that was helpful. Please don't hesitate to ask questions, reach out. Like Clint and I love woodwork and building and construction and creating. So we would love your thoughts and opinions and hearing your experiences. Happy building, good luck.